Football always was her love. So the fact that you have footage of her playing it doesn't surprise me one bit. Like, that's her.
She was a football fanatic. But when she wasn't playing football, she was watching football. She was into the sport, hook, line, and sinker.
She's an athlete. So when she sees other athletes, it resonates with her. There's a resonant feel to how she looks at the world.
Now, the little girl who loved football is all grown up, and she's become one of the most well-known sportscasters at ESPN. When you walk in this room, what stands out the most to you of all your memories?
Well, you know, if anybody ever wonders if my love of football is genuine or how I got into this, all you have to do is look at my past. Yep. I was one of the first little girls in the country to ever play organized football.
Suzy Kolber is the only girl on the all-boy Upper Dublin Township Junior Athletic Association team. Susan, what makes you want to be a football player?
Well, I like the sport and I always wanted to do it.
Aren't you afraid you might get hurt?
No.
Suzy Kolber's dreams were short-lived.
For whatever reason, kind of know how it is, still goes on today, the parents had a problem with it.
Parents are mean. They are. There was no reason for it.
She loves football. She's very athletic. And if it's something that she wants to do, I think she should get out of her system and do it.
Aren't you afraid she might get hurt?
Not any more so than if I had a son in there.
It developed into a lawsuit because the parents didn't want her to play.
I wanted the boys to have their season, so we stepped back. I never put the helmet on again. And the coaches felt so bad at the time. Nobody got to keep the playbook, but they gave me the playbook.
Oh, look at that.
So I still have it.
Why did you want to play football?
It was in my soul. It's hard to explain.
That didn't stop Suzy from playing sports. And in Florida, she found another way to pursue her passion. When did you know you wanted to be a sports broadcaster?
When I was at the University of Miami, I started interning at what was then the CBS affiliate in Miami, and I was interning in the sports department and logging the Stanley Cup finals, and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. Like, I could have a job that would have me in sports all the time.
After you catch your first lacrosse game, you might just get carried away. Suzy Kolber, Hurricane Sports Watch. But our guest host,
Suzy produced, reported, and directed her way to ESPN, where she was hired to help launch ESPN2.
Suzy started as an original anchor on ESPN2 in 1993. From the moment she was on TV at ESPN, you could just see she was a star. And there's not anybody who cares about their job more than Suzy cares about hers.
When did you feel that you had earned your position in sports and really earned the respect of the players and the coaches and got that credibility?
I think the big change for me happened with the NFL when I was doing the Edge NFL matchup show. And Ron Jaworski and Merrill Hodge were on the show with me. And that was hardcore X's and O's. And I was dishing it with those guys. And that Tennessee offense, it was always Eddie George left, Eddie George right. Are they really going multiple sets, empty backfield?
You bet they are.
And I started to see a change that players and coaches started coming up and talking to me. They knew
that
I
you
knew what I was talking about, and there was a mutual respect.
Congratulations on everything so far.
We haven't done anything yet.
Yeah, I know, but it's awesome.
Do you have a favorite thing that you do?
For me, being on the sideline was the most natural thing.
Really?
Being at the line of scrimmage and feeling the collisions and seeing it, that I think will always be what's really in my soul. And the most important thing to me has always been the relationships. So I still get to see the guys and see the coaches and interact personally, which I love.
After all the time away, what was it like to such a dramatic comeback?
Well, that's not how we drew it up, but I'll take it.
As personable as Suzy is, throughout her career, she's never been afraid to ask tough questions.
Right off the top, Eli, why don't you want to play for the Chargers?
We're not really giving details right now. We just, we've made our decision, and that's what we're sticking to.
Mike Holmgren arguing with the officials right now as he walks off the field, engaged in a discussion with Bill Levy. Mike, what did all the confusion come from?
Well, they're telling me upstairs the ball didn't cross the line, and he's telling me it did for the touchdown down there on the replay.
Super Bowl 40, at the post party, John Madden said, that's how you do sideline.
You couldn't ask for a better endorsement. And we know it has not always been easy. Of course, the moment with Joe Namath that you couldn't have been more professional.
What does it mean to you now when the team is struggling?
I want to kiss you. I couldn't care less about the team struggling.
Who knew what that was going to turn into?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wanted to interview me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I will never talk about this.
Because you didn't want to be the story.
I didn't want to be the story, and how do you make something go away?
Yeah.
Stop talking about it.
Hey, Suzy, good to see you.
You want to catch some punts?
Yes. Gotta get over here.
After nearly 30 years with ESPN, Suzy has never stopped talking about football.
We'll see you at the top of the hour from Monday Night Countdown.
She's had a love affair with that sport for the longest time. And whether she played it, covered it, talked about it, I mean, I can't imagine her not being a part of it.
She's a tremendous teammate. If we look at the set and she's the quarterback, she can call the plays. That's cool.
So aren't we talking about running backs who can actually do the job?
Yes. All of them, and for these two teams, should only look at it from the standpoint of they're all good at it. Yes. And just focus on that.
She's a football player. I think that's what I love about her the most is she's a football player. Even today, that's who she is. I think it's super cool.
Suzy, don't forget to tell those guys that you used to play. Just tell them, remind them that. They get a little rough, you just hit them right above the knee.
That's why we're
above the knee, that's a good call, Coach. Good call, Coach.
This is a good gig if we can get it, you know?
Awesome.
This is probably the second best thing to being on that football field for you as a young child.
I have never taken for granted the access, the spot at the line of scrimmage, of being able to be at the games and talk to the people that I get to talk to. I have never taken that for granted for 1 second.
Well, the irony is you're still on the football field, so.
Yeah.
Want to get started right off the bat. Welcome to our third SPJ Sports Committee event. I am the chairman of our committee, Jeff Kolb. We have a great event lined up tonight, as we've been advertising for a couple of weeks now, with ESPN Monday Night Countdown host Suzy Kolber, who's nice enough to zoom in with us from Connecticut during her off season, which she can explain more. Lauren Vassallo, a producer editor at ESPN, who's the vice chair on our committee, will be mostly leading this conversation tonight. For those familiar with our events, you know that we want to make this interactive. We want to take as many participant questions as we can. If you have a question, use the raise your hand feature and turn your video on, please. And when we come to you, just say your name and your title first and let it rip. And we'll have a great conversation with Suzy tonight. With that, I want to turn it over to Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jeff. So as Jeff said, my name is Lauren Vassallo. I am a producer editor at ESPN. So I was very grateful when Suzy responded to my emails last week about trying to get someone on for this month. And look, we have a new participant.
Cooper is here too.
Hi, Cooper. So we wanted to originally share a video with you guys that Suzy actually sent to us that the NFL Films team created, just a 7-minute little video going over Suzy's life, really, and career. But unfortunately, we were having some playback issues when Jeff and I were testing it out. So we can send that video in the chat, but I was really fascinated watching that video and learning so much, Suzy. So I just want to, let's start from the top. Tell us a little bit more about your passion and your love for football, and where did that come from?
Yeah, I think the point of the video was, how can you tell someone's love of what they do is truly genuine? And mine started as a little kid. For whatever reason, football was in my soul. And at 8 years old, I convinced my mom to buy me a helmet and pads for Halloween. And shortly after that, I told them I wanted to go out for our district Pee Wee football team. And this is in the 70s. So going back to then, it was pretty unheard of for a little girl to want to play organized football. And the first year I showed up, they told me that I was late for registration, which wasn't really true. So the next year I was extra early. And I went through all of the tryouts for the 10-year-old team. And I was always pretty athletic. And I really, really wanted to play. And the coaches saw that. And the coaches were willing. And the little boys, once they saw that I could really play, they were on board too. But it was incredibly the parents of the other players who wanted to shut down the league if I played. And we fought for a while, but my feeling was I didn't want to take away the season from all these 10-year-old boys just for me. So after a fight, we fought through the summer. After a fight, I stepped away. But it was heartbreaking for me then, because all I really wanted to do was play. They accused my parents of wanting publicity and pushing me into it, which was about the farthest thing from the truth. And the way I've looked at it, through the years is, in the end, I had a longer career playing football than most guys or men do playing football. And I really wanted to be the quarterback. And as Steve Young, who's a Hall of Famer, who sits next to me on the set Monday nights, has said a number of times, I'm the quarterback of this team. So I've been able to, enjoy the game and be up close on the sidelines and at the stadiums for many, many years now. So in the end, I won the battle. But that's sort of the long and short of that story, is that I was one of the first little girls to play organized football, definitely in Philadelphia, where I grew up, but possibly in the country. And it was kind of foreshadowing what the rest of my career would be, hanging out with the boys.
Have any of the parents that were fighting to not have you play, have any of them reached out to you since then to be like, wow, we messed up?
No.
It was worth a shot.
Message, you think?
Yeah. Well, you know what? You don't even need it. You could just let them know. They see what you're doing. They know.
Just to jump in on that, Suzy, I know one of the moments that I loved from the NFL film story was Andy Reid. You were doing a talk back with him, and he made sure to let the rest of your crew on set know, hey, Suzy played, and if they give you trouble, hit them above the knee. How have people within the NFL circles learned about your playing career, and what do they think of that?
Yeah, I think that's, it's instant credibility that they all know what the game means to me and for how long. And I always really appreciated that Andy Reid, of course, has now won 2 Super Bowls, and he was in Philadelphia for quite a long time. So he's sort of got the connection with the Philly girl and from Philadelphia. So I just love that he would, whenever we would be, in live shots or things, that the clip that was in the piece was from the NFL draft, when we were talking to him during the NFL draft, that he would always bring that up. And he has a line that I always love when his guys are tough or somebody is tough. He calls them dirty tough. And whenever he would see me, he would say, I'm dirty tough, which I would take as a huge compliment. But yes, instant credibility. And Steve Young says it in the piece as well, which I hope you guys get to see, that you sort of understand that I love the game. Even though I was a little kid, I know how to play the game. And throughout my whole time, whether it was in high school or college, I always participated in sports. That for me it was much more than watching it. It was always about participating. And if you participate in any kind of sport, then I think you can relate to the athletes, and you have a certain level of respect for what it feels like to be excelling or to be in a slump, and what it takes to get out of that.
Jeff, I know the next question was your question. I don't know if you want to ask it or.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. We can go in any number of directions. So I guess maybe one natural next direction to go, Suzy, is so playing the game. Obviously, you have a natural foundation of understanding some X's and O's and things like that. But still, I think for anyone that hasn't played in the NFL or at the highest level, there's some learning from our side of it to be done. Can you talk more about how you learned more about the X's and O's? And I know we keep referencing the NFL Films interview, but you talked about in that piece how you were on set with, I think it was Merrill Hodge and Chris Mortensen, maybe. Ron Jaworski, that's right. And you guys, you were really able to go back and forth.
One of the, one of the steps along the way, I left ESPN for a short period of time, and I went to work at Fox on the West Coast. And one of the deals for me coming back was because I was doing more college football, things like that, and a lot of other events. I did the original X Games, which were called the Extreme Games. And I did a lot of great stuff in my first few years at ESPN. And then I left. And when I came back, one of my demands was I want the NFL. I did, for Fox, I did pregame show, Fox NFL Sunday. But I wanted to be more involved. So when I came back, they said, hey, well, we have this show, Edge NFL Matchup, and a lot of really great people had hosted that show before me, Mike Tirico, Stuart Scott. And that show is hardcore X's and O's. And it's shot at NFL Films and produced there. And it was an unbelievable experience learning and mixing it up with guys who are so knowledgeable about the game. And I felt a real shift at that time in my career, because now when I was at stadiums and I was on the field in the morning waiting for our live shots and players were on the field warming up, players and coaches, instead of me always approaching them, now they were coming over to talk to me, because there was a different sort of now credibility and recognition that I really knew and loved the game. So it was one of many steps along the way, I think, but that really sort of changed a big dynamic for me, hosting that show.
Absolutely. I'm seeing on our chat, a few people are just hopping on. It looks like we have a great crowd. Thanks everyone for hopping on. For those who just got on, again, feel free to use the raise your hand feature. We'll try to get a bunch of questions in. We've been talking with Suzy about her early days in football. She played until they basically tried to push her out from being able to play. And obviously, as you know, she found her way back to the game at ESPN and at a couple other networks as well. One thing, and then Lauren, I'll switch it back to you. As we're on the X's and O's part of the question asking here, I know you have a prop you want to show us, Suzy. Talk about how you prepare for the season, day to day, and right now for the NFL draft.
Oh, before all you guys jumped on, we were just talking about what I'm doing now. So the next major event for us, for ESPN ABC, is the NFL draft. And my responsibility is night one, I'm in the green room with the prospects that are invited. So this year there'll be 18 prospects invited. I'm still waiting for that final list. We get it a little advance of everybody else to know who were the guys that got the invites and accepted them. But I'm pretty old school with my notes. So once last season ended and then everything starts to happen, free agency opens and there's new head coaches and there's new players on teams. So every year I build myself a little one sheet of all 32 teams. And in that, who's the new coach and what new free agents have joined that team. It's pretty initially simple. And then I have all the major positions in the draft and I start to get to know these guys, down to what their parents' names are, but really kind of, it makes the draft so much more fun when you can really connect to these guys. And when you see them picked, they always say it's the best reality TV, life-changing moment for these guys. And it just makes it so much for me, so much more fun to really know their stories, not just for asking the right questions on the air, but just appreciating the journey, the path they took, what it means to their parents. So that's what I'm working on right now. We get, flooded with as many articles as we can handle and research. And I've got a lot of NFL Network on because they do a really great job of bringing a lot of those key features and stories. And I'm digging into all of that. And that's what's happening right now in my world, getting ready for the first night of the NFL draft.
Lauren, do you want to take a couple questions really quickly?
I was just gonna say, yeah, I see some hands up, and I think Harold was the first hand to go up. So Harold, Jeff will unmute you, and you can ask your question.
Harold, fire away.
All right. Well, first off, Suzy, hello. I actually work in Kansas City. So you mentioned the NFL draft, and that immediately struck my attention. And my question would be, as someone trying to cover the NFL draft, what would be your best suggestions for trying to cover it, especially now that it's on location? You've had experience being on location. What are the processes that ESPN uses to try to cover a draft on location that people like us and local media can use to help us go forward?
Right. Well, we're in a slightly different category from you because we're not just covering it, we are broadcasting it. We are one of the partners that broadcast the draft. But still, you know, like I've already seen the emails, I've gotten the emails from NFL Communications that's asking for, you know, if you want to sign up for credentials to cover the draft. So that would be the first step, would be to contact NFL Communications as, you know, I'm a local, I'm working for whoever, and make sure you get credentialed so you can, you know, at least gain access to the draft. But it is, for the last handful of years that the draft moved out of New York and moved across the country, and the way they build the stage and the green room, it's seriously extraordinary. I mean, wait till you see how that whole area, that station area, how it's transformed and how it's going to look. I mean, the number of people, the first year we did that was Philadelphia, and we didn't think that would ever be repeated. I think there was about 250,000 people there, you know, lining the streets. And just from what we saw from the parade after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, I'm pretty sure we can expect a huge crowd, and hopefully the weather agrees. But to your specific question of being able to cover it, is NFL Communications and initially just gaining access by getting a credential.
All right, why don't we go to another question? I
think Kayla was next.
Let's go to Kayla. If you could say your name and your title. Kayla, you're up.
Hey, so my name is Kayla Powell. Title, I want to become a sports commentator in some sort. I've always had a dream of having like First Take, but with all females, all different personalities, something different and unique. This is actually great. Somebody suggested this group to me. It's actually really nice. But I do have a few questions. The first question, like going into where you are now, what was the hardest part? Also, what was the best experience? And then also in the draft coming up, who's your top 3 candidates?
Oh, you mean who's going? It's probably going to be quarterbacks 1, 2, 3, which is going to be big. You know, people love to see quarterbacks, so I've got my fingers crossed that all these guys are going to come to Kansas City, and they're all going to be there in the green room. And then there's a phenomenal pass rusher, Will Anderson, who's going to be right up there with the quarterbacks. So these names that everybody is hearing now, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, these guys they're going 1, 2, and then probably Will Anderson 3. Probably my top moment of my career is I got to do sidelines for the Super Bowl. It was on ABC, the 2006, Pittsburgh and Seattle. And I was assigned Seattle, which just turned out to be I got fabulous access from Mike Holmgren, the head coach, and throughout the week leading up to it, great access with the team. Matt Hasselbeck, who's couldn't be a better guy. He was my quarterback. And Holmgren gave me such great access that before the game, he allowed me in the tunnel as he addressed the team for the final time before they ran out, which was the report that I used for my last hit before kickoff, which was pretty great. I would say in terms of challenges, it probably more on the personal side and the sacrifices of my life and that type of thing than really the profession. I was, I never felt even going way, way back in the beginning of my career when there were just practically no women around, I never really felt out of place just because it was so much a part of me and my soul and how much I loved it and could speak the language and felt a part of it, that I never really felt like being a woman in the business was something that was different in a challenging sort of way. I kind of enjoyed the journey in that sense, and it never held me back. And I would certainly like to think that today there's more and more and more opportunities, and and less people are even thinking that way.
Suzy, I'm just going to jump in real quick, and Grant and Reed, I see you guys have your hands up, but I have a question that I had pre-prodded, if you will, kind of going off of what you just said. So it's commonly known how difficult it is for women to gain respect in the workforce, especially in this sports and male-dominated field. And you've clearly battled this stigma since childhood with parents, not letting you play with the boys in the football league. How have you been able to overcome these biases, and what are some suggestions for other women who aspire to be a sports journalist?
Key is that it wouldn't necessarily just even be for women. It's an incredibly competitive business, obviously. So the key things which go back to, here's my love of the game, is being genuine, because people can see through if you're not. Are you doing it for the right reasons? Do you just want to be on TV, or do you truly love what you do and want to cover sports? Nothing replaces hard work. Are you willing to outwork everybody and anybody? Because again, it's so wildly competitive. You better be willing to work harder than everybody else. And I think going all the way back to the days where I was at the University of Miami and I was an intern at one of the local stations, and news director would see me there, and say, what are you doing? Are you working are you doing a split shift? No, I was actually here in the morning and I'm still here at night, because I was doing anything it took to get my foot in the door. And as it turned out, they gave me a producer's job after I graduated college. So the work ethic worked. And then the next thing would be respecting the sports, really understanding and knowing the sports and learning the language. And throughout my career, I covered absolutely everything at one point or another, learning that sport, learning the lingo, learning the players, knowing the sport. Come prepared for an interview, show you respect the subject that you're talking to by really knowing them and understanding the sport. You respect them, and then I think there is a natural mutual respect that comes back. So I can say that I don't ever feel like throughout my career there was, in terms of being on the air, a disrespectful moment.
I think, like you said, I think coming prepared into a situation, I've learned even just in my field, just even prepping for a piece as much as I can is always the goal, and it always makes things easier in the long run. But obviously there are situations that arise in the world and in sports, and I know I kind of prepped you on this one already with you and the entire team's response to the Damar Hamlin situation, how you guys covered that and how beautifully you guys covered that. But I just wanted to ask, what's it like handling a completely unexpected situation on live TV where you can't prepare for anything like that?
I would never say that being on live TV in any situation necessarily easy, but when things are going smoothly and you've done it for a really long time, it shouldn't be all that hard. The show that we do on Monday night, we do really try to raise the bar, and it's very unscripted, and it is as much of an event as a studio show, meaning there is a rundown, but we like to be able to go off script and that type of thing. But the real challenging part of the job is when things don't go smoothly and don't go as expected, that you can make them look as if you are prepared for that, or that nothing's really wrong, or it is going smoothly. Now, in this case, this was something that was unprecedented. And what made it most challenging was that we had no information, and the league was giving us no information. And we're back in the studio, and we're really just trying to help out, everybody, just to give them a little bit of a breather. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Lisa Salters, who handled things so beautifully on site. But we're all kind of getting the same lack of information from the NFL. And at the same time, our producers would walk into the studio, and we were in New York that week. Mostly for the season, we are in the stadium. We do our pregame show on the field in the stadium, and then we're in our television compound watching in our production truck that we call the Rock. That's what we're watching, and then we come out, we do halftime, and then we go back in there, and we're usually on site. But just a few times during the season, because of budget, they keep us at home. So it turned out this particular week, our crew, the pregame crew, was in New York, which I guess it made it feel even more detached and difficult, because you can't, we're seeing just as much as you guys at home. We're not seeing anymore. And producers are coming into the studio and saying, we can't let you talk to anybody. There are no guests, no doctor, nobody, because we don't want you to speculate. You cannot speculate. And there were even words like the word unprecedented, which it was. They would say to me, you can't use that word. Like they were pouring restrictions on us, and we kind of had nowhere to go. And it was emotional. And all we want is to see him get up, so there was a tremendous emotion. Booger McFarland was on the set with me. It was very, very difficult for him as a former player. Very difficult. So it was exhausting is kind of the only way to try to do the right thing, to say the right thing, and just kind of connect with the audience that in this moment, all we're really doing is just helping us all be here together, hoping and praying and pulling for DeMar with, again, absolutely no information and just the worst possible circumstances. Yeah.
It was something to watch, Suzy. I mean, the pressure, like you're saying, between the not knowing, the emotions of it, the restrictions, as someone who knows what it's like to do live TV, to try and process all of that and keep it together is a lot. I'm sure we'll have some more questions on that. Let's get to a couple more questions. Let's go to Haley.
Hi, Suzy. This is such an honor for me. I'm the team reporter for the Dallas Cowboys, but I actually just moved here from a station in Miami. So I feel like the stars are aligned in us meeting.
Connection.
I just kind of wanted to ask you about making that next step, because obviously I'm still pretty early in my career. I'm about 5 years in now, but one of the things I'd really like to transition into more is being more of an analyst, as opposed to just like, the talking head or the token woman. I'm really blessed to work with a lot of gentlemen. Jeff is one of those guys that I see all the time at the Star, but I'm really blessed to work with a lot of guys who are helpful in me, improving my football knowledge. But what would you say maybe is a way that you were able to kind of take that next leap so that the way you speak about football is a little bit more than surface level?
Yeah, and the great example of that is Mina Kimes, who's carved this phenomenal niche as a true analyst. And I think she, it's not just analytics, it's really knowing and understanding the game. And I would say too, just like for me earlier in the career, and I wouldn't say that I am hardcore in the sense of analyst X and O's. I understand the game, but I really try to educate people more in a sense of information related from coaches and players. And that's kind of my niche, I would say, that I'm not very good at BSing on the air. I have to really not only have my info, but have it confirmed from players and coaches. And you can read a billion quotes in the newspaper, but until you have that confirmed from a player or a coach, I typically would not say it on the air. And I have, just because of we are covering the game and doing the game, great access to teams. So I do a ton of prep, research and reading articles and all these numbers. And I put all that together to then be able to ask the right questions of the players and the coaches, and then help to educate the viewer with all of that information. But I would say, I love the idea that you want to be an analyst, which is great. And we don't have enough women who are doing that. And it would be to make sure you align yourself with somebody. Maybe there is a particular coach who could be a great mentor. And I know there's lots of great guys around that Cowboys organization to, hey, I want to take my game to the next level. What can I do? Can I hang with you? Can I hang in meetings? Can I watch film? Anything like that, just to be able to take your knowledge to the next level.
Let's go with another question from Reed Becker. Reed, you're up.
Hi, Suzy. Thank you very much. My name is Reed Becker. I'm a college student at Dean College. My question is, first, I have a couple questions. First off is just, what would you say your most memorable interview would be? Second would be, if you could go back to your younger self, what would you tell yourself that you maybe didn't know back then when you were starting out? And then lastly is, since I interned last summer for the Cape Cod Baseball League as a broadcast intern, and I was doing a lot of interviews with players and coaches and all that, I had noticed that, you know, when interviewing, it's a lot of just being a good listener and following up and all that. But my thing is, how do you balance, I guess, being able to, you know, in a longer formed interview just for print, you might have more time on your own to talk to the person. Whereas for you, maybe like on ESPN, on TV, you're up against a clock where maybe you have a follow-up, but you can't get it in because you have a certain amount of time that you can have with the person. How do you balance that?
Yeah, that happens all the time. In fact, in something like the NFL draft, where I have dug in so deep and I know all this great stuff about a guy and his family, and here he is on the stage, you know, on the stage this year in Kansas City, and you want to be able to really dig in, and then you wind up just going with the absolute great emotion of the moment or that type of thing. But I would say in any interview that I've ever done, whether it's really short form or a long form, I've played that out in my mind. I've kind of in my mind choreographed the interview, so I'm prepared for quick answer, long answer, what would be a good follow-up. So it all sort of is there and feels natural, but then you've really got to listen for the follow-up. And sometimes the shortest follow-up is the better. Why? And it's so key to ask open and neutral questions. And it's never to make you, the interviewer, look smart. It's to get the best out of the person that you're interviewing. So you can't really have an ego. You're not trying to demonstrate how much you know. You want to get the best possible information out of that person. And then also to not be afraid to put the responsibility of the interview on the person you're interviewing. Because oftentimes if you ask a question that is more neutral or open-ended, they wind up giving you a much, much better answer. And they'll take you where you hope they would go on their own. So I'd say that for whether it's happening in a quick amount of time. And of course, if you know you are up against the clock, then you got to go with your best thing. And sometimes it shouldn't be about trying to ask as many different types of questions. Sometimes you get the best interview by sticking with the topic and digging in a little bit more. Like I said, after the first question is why, sometimes gives you the best answer. And maybe if I had to put them all together and say one of the coolest interviews, after the Lillehammer Olympics, we did an Olympic special for ESPN2. And we went to Washington and went to the White House with the Olympians. And I got to spend the day hanging out with the ski team. And then the end of the show was an interview with the president, with Bill Clinton, you know, in one of the great rooms there in the White House. That was was a pretty cool experience.
Very cool. I just want to, I still see it. We have all your hands up. I just wanted to piggyback off of off of that answer and a previous answer. Going back to, you're interviewing these players and coaches, and you're building relationships with them and with GMs and building your sources. How would you go about earning trust of those players and coaches? And what's your advice on how to create those connections?
The best relationship building happened for many years at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, which is, for many years sort of like spring break for coaches, where every staff, the whole staff, all of them are there, and they're there for the week. And when they're done their work, they want to let loose, and being able to hang was a really big part of it. Being able to hang really late night until the lights come on at the bar, and then be up first thing in the morning and be on the air. And I think that more than anything is, and you know what? Most of the time you're not even talking football. You're just getting to know these guys. And so there's a lot of trust was built in that type of environment. Right now going on to the NFL owners meetings, and that happens every year, and all the head coaches and the general managers, all the front office, they're there, at some very nice hotel, and same kind of thing, just very casually hanging out and getting to know them on a different type of level. And when you build real relationships, not just based on work, like in any environment, in any job, and anything you do, your team, you get to know people outside the office. And I think that's been one of the really key things through all of this, is getting to know a lot of these people, and then delivering with, we're not necessarily talking football, but a lot of information gets spilled, and knowing how to handle that and earning trust in that way. And for many years, our access, because we do what's called production meetings before games, and I was on the sideline for 10 years. So I'm in these meetings with the head coach, the coordinators, the stars on the team, and we can ask them anything we want. And a lot of that information is for public consumption, and a lot is not. It just gives us great background and knowing what to use and what not to use. And that also builds a tremendous level of trust that, I've been in those meetings now for over 20 years, and knowing, how to protect these guys, what to say and what not to say. It's a big part of the trust, the relationships, and the credibility.
How do you decide whether you could report something or not? Is it just your own moral code and ethics, or do they say this is off the record, or a little bit of both? How do you go about saying okay, he said this to me, there's a portion of this that I could really use, but maybe not? How do you determine I'm gonna go with this or not?
There is a little bit of both. There is occasionally someone will say this is off the record, and then if I either don't write it down or put it in big parentheses, and you just know, and then a lot of it is feel. There are things guys say and I think, wow, he should not have said that to us, or and I'm glad that he trusted us with that. But I think it's understanding and being smart, and then understanding a particular role too. I've never really considered. I'm not a newsbreaker. That's not my job. And I would rather sit on something that's a huge information to continue to build trust than to break it. It's that along the way has been more valuable to me.
Just to piggyback on that, if I may, even though you're saying obviously you're not a newsbreaker in the way that maybe an Adam Schefter is,
right.
How can you speak, Suzy, to some of the different dynamics that go into why people in the industry reach out to give you certain tips, and also reaching out to people to try and get certain tips, like the difference between an agent might have a motivation to supply you with something, whereas a GM might be trying to withhold something from you?
Right. And someone like an Adam Schefter or a Chris Mortensen they have to understand that fine line, because they have to give information to get information. But what information are you protecting, and what information are you sharing? And there have definitely been times along the way, and a lot of times it's been regarding the NFL draft, is I've checked in with Chris Mortensen, who's like a godfather of this. And, should I, Adam wants to know, I think so-and-so, and I can't, because he's got his people and his sources, and I'm going to protect mine. And I think a lot of it just, it comes down to being smart and understanding the business and the relationships and the consequences.
Lauren, should we get to some questions?
I was gonna say, yeah, we have a lot of questions going up here, and I think Grant is next.
All right, Grant. Oh, sorry. Grant, have it.
Suzy, thanks so much for coming here tonight. I'm Grant Flood, a freshman at Dean College. My question to you is, I know that obviously you covered football, including the Super Bowl and the draft and whatnot, but I also noticed that you've covered hockey, tennis, NASCAR, and other sports. So can you explain any other memorable sports broadcasting experiences, non-NFL related?
Probably for me, I was the original host of, at the time they were called the Extreme Games, and nobody really knew what they were. And in fact, before they ever appeared on television, Ron Semio, who used to be an executive at ESPN, he came up with this great concept of alternative sports. And on my resume tape that I used to get the job at ESPN was me as a reporter in West Palm Beach. And I was the weekend sports reporter. And during the week, I did feature reports, and I usually tried to do more alternative sport type of things, and I would participate in them. And that was the real joy in it. And all these, I'm skateboarding, I'm mountain biking, I'm kayaking, that stuff was on my resume tape. So they came to me and asked if I'd like to go shoot this demo up in Newport, Rhode Island, for this thing we're calling the Extreme Games. And I got up there and I saw the script, and I thought, I kind of know more about a lot of these sports than this script seems to know. And we threw away the script and we taped this demo, and the rest is sort of history, because it went on to become the Extreme Games, and now, and then famously the X Games. And that was such a joy for me to host and be a part of something new and what we created and what it became. So, and along the way, different people saw me hosting that and felt like I was capable of hosting other things. And I really enjoyed throughout a big part of my career is getting to, be at the Kentucky Derby, and we did specials from there. I hosted the Stanley Cup Finals to be able to do that. I have never been out of the country for personal, over to Europe, but I've been there for work. I got to spend time, the travel, I've just always loved it, because I hosted at at the French Open. I got to spend time, in Paris, which, by the way, when you're working, it's not really glamorous, but it's super cool to see. And same thing for Wimbledon. We got to live in cool flats right in the town of Wimbledon, in and around our event coverage. So those kind of things have been such wonderful perks. But the flip side of that is just pouring yourself into the sports, to going back to that respect and preparation and research. Is a lot of it looks more glamorous than it is because you're working, but some of the experiences obviously are just invaluable.
As someone from Rhode Island, the X Games always have a soft spot in my heart. So the luging down College Hill, we love that.
Yeah.
Let's get to another question here. Let's go to Corey Mose.
Hey, Suzy, how you doing? My name is Corey Mose. I'm a sports anchor out in Austin. Just a couple of questions for you. Just first off, I know that with this job, you spoke about like moving up the ladder, trying to work your way from local news to network. You got to work really hard, make a lot of sacrifices. And so I'm kind of at this point where I'm struggling with the point of like trying to be at every event and every press conference and every game, but then also balancing that with like life, you know? And so how do you balance the two? Or how did you balance the two while you were trying to make your way up the ladder? And the other question was, you talked about building relationships with coaches at the combine. How do you build relationships with the players when you have limited time with them?
I'll give you an example of the most limited time, let's say the draft. And I think even though my interview on the stage is going to be brief, I think it's going to be a better interview if they already know me, know my face. I'm not taking for granted that any of these guys watch the NFL or have seen me before. And I think if you have a personal connection with somebody, you're going to get a better response. So for a number of years now, I make a point of somehow, whether it was, meeting them while they were taking pictures at the combine or the night before the draft, they are all doing, they go through, it's sort of a car wash for their sponsors. They're at the Players Hotel and they're doing interviews and appearances. And I put myself in the middle of all of that. And as a little unit, like our talent coordinator, we will make sure I have met every one of those guys. And we're hanging in the lobby of the Players Hotel. So a lot of times it's chatting with their parents too. And you just get such great information chatting with their parents and making sure I shook their hands. And a lot of times there might be a question that I think could get a really great response, but it's sensitive. And I would want to know, is it okay if I ask you about your grandfather who passed? That type of thing. So I connect with them, hopefully on a personal level beforehand. And then there have been, through the years, take like an Aaron Rodgers who wound up sitting forever in the green room waiting to get drafted. And I was the only one there with him. We sort of developed a connection that's lasted his whole career because I was there. I understood, the emotions of the moment and handled it with respect and didn't put him on the spot. But I think it's been kind of a cool process, is getting to know a lot of these guys through the draft. Then you get to know them on the way in. And then just the access of whatever moment you can get after practice or coming off the field, just walking and talking, or whatever access you're allowed, take. And then to the point of the sacrifice, I said this quite a while ago, that the biggest challenge, I believe it was to Kayla, the biggest challenge wasn't about the challenges of the profession. It was the challenges of the personal, of what I was sacrificing and giving up. And I was at everything and I was everywhere. And there were times early in my career at ESPN where I was on the road 5 days a week and I worked 6 days and I was on 3 different flights. And it was during 9/11 and we were waiting for hours in lines. But I went and did a piece with a guy. I spent a whole Tuesday on their off day with them. And then we aired that feature in Monday Countdown. And I got home and then I went to New Jersey to host Edge NFL matchup. And then from there, I went to our game site. And after the game, then I went home, but I was only home for a day and I was back out on the road on Tuesday. And to break in the way you want in this crazy competitive, you're probably going to have to sacrifice. But if you truly love it, it's a labor of love and it'll pay off. And there are lots of different ways to approach the job. Not everybody has to go to a network. You can move to a number of, by the way, I love Austin, but you could maybe, whatever your goal is. I thought I wanted to be a reporter in a big market. That's really what I thought I wanted to do. Because I really loved being the reporter and being around people. And I never just wanted to be in a studio. And then one thing led to another, and versatility, I think, has been really a key for me throughout my career. But there's so many people who are really happy in local markets. It's awesome. And they probably had more of a life than I got to along the way. but in the end, you know, for me, I wouldn't trade it.
And do it while you're young, right? And you can operate on little sleep still. Because I cannot operate on little sleep now. Okay, I think we're gonna continue on. We got 6 more questions here. Josh Barbara, let's have you go next.
Hi, Suzy. Thank you once again for joining us tonight. My question for you was about who you think will possibly go first in the NFL draft. I know Frank Reich is the new head coach of the Panthers, and he has said many times that he has a specific kind of QB that he likes. He likes a bigger guy. Do you still think that they'll look heavily into Bryce Young over CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson? Do you still think that they could take him?
They are sure doing their due diligence. Not only they're at every one of their pro days, and that as a performance thing really doesn't carry a ton of weight, but they've spent a lot of personal time around these guys, going to dinner. They'll have them, all the quarterbacks, they'll have them all in for part of their 30 visits so they can put them on the board and really, really get to know these guys. I don't know why I have this gut that it's going to be Bryce Young. And that maybe, you know, these guys are all so good at throwing people off the trail, you know, and his whole history is and he was too, a bigger quarterback. But as he keeps on saying, and he said it again at the owners' meetings, you have to take every single thing into consideration and weigh every single thing. And Young he has really been a magician with processing the game. And the height hasn't hurt him in the SEC and playing against the best and behind a big offensive line. And there's just, I don't think anybody right now, which is the way we like it going into the draft, I don't think anybody, including them, I don't think anybody really knows. That was the case, I think, with the Niners, that they traded up to 3 and everybody thought it was for Mac Jones, and they still have lots of time before they have to turn that card in. And I think they're going to take every last minute.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, we have Ian next. Ian, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce your last name because I don't want to ruin it.
Sure, no worries at all. First off, Lauren and Jeff, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and Suzy as well. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Ian Apetian. I'm a sophomore at TCU, studying journalism and sports broadcasting. And my question for you is, I guess, looking back at your career, and that can either be at the start or even as recent as just the last couple of years or months even, what has set you apart from the rest? And also, what have you learned about yourself over your career?
Every time I think that because I've been doing this a long time, that I could somehow streamline my preparation and, you know, be more efficient, I don't know how to not do it 100%. And I feel like I'm always somehow like, I'm going to dig just a little deeper, read one more thing, watch one more thing. And then it always seems to pay off. That's the one thing that on the fly, the information I needed or I used. And I just don't think there's no substitute for working hard and being prepared. And I know that if I'm not prepared, then I can't even imagine really going on live TV. I would just be really nervous. And there's sort of a calm about knowing that you're ready to go under any circumstances, because, you know, the show we do, as I mentioned, you know, is we try to be as unscripted as possible. So to be as prepared as possible in every different way, that's never really changed. You know, through the years, as we've interviewed like guys like Tom Brady, who said like he's better at the game today and he can have a family and still prep because he's more efficient at it. So I think in certain ways, I guess, yes, but there's just never been any real substitute for the hardcore prep. And again, it comes back to really respecting the game. And also, respecting the audience. And for me, I think it's a combination of people see I truly, truly love it and enjoy it. And I do think that comes through on the air, and then also getting it right. And I had mentioned about confirming something by actually speaking directly to the people we're talking about. It's just so important. And especially now, there's so much information out there. It's so important for all of you. Get it right. That's what will set you apart. Don't be first, be right. It's much more important.
Suzy, I have a question about what you do nowadays with Monday Night Countdown as the host, as the person steering the ship. Can you talk about leading the team, leading these guys like Steve Young and RG3 and the other people on your set, and building the chemistry, how you make them comfortable at their job?
Well, one of the things too, I'll say that I'm proud of, because of my background, and before I was ever on TV, I was a producer, and I loved that. I really love that whole angle of producing and the creativity of it and the editing. But also versatility in this business is so important, that because I was a producer for many years, I understand and I've seen the inner workings of so many different things of what it takes to put a show on the air. And I'm very much a part of putting the show together, of the elements that are in the show. And I write everything myself. Nobody's writing anything for me. So I think that's a really important part of it. And listening to the guys. And again, as the host, it's my job is to make them shine. And people want to hear from these guys. And it's my job to put a bow on a thought, to get them where they're supposed to be, make sure if they're going to talk over a tape that they can easily get to that tape, to know the points. We spend, when we have major stories in our show, first as just a production team without the other guys, we spend a lot of time. We meet during the week, and then we meet again on Monday mornings before all the other analysts ever get on with us, just to talk about what if this scenario, when Tom Brady comes out of the tunnel, depending on when he's coming out, what should we be doing? What should we be talking about? Just so we kind of have all the bases covered. And then we have another meeting in the afternoon where all the guys are on, and I get to hear more of the angles that they want to take, what's important to them, and kind of being able to put all of that together, helping them to be their best is what my job is.
Let's get to some more questions. How about Molly Golden? Molly, you're up.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm Molly. First off, I want to say hi, Lauren. Thank you for inviting me to this. I'm so happy and honored to be here. I'm actually in high school. I'm a junior in high school right now. My question is, I'm just starting my college process right now and applying and making my list. So what is your best advice for a girl who wants to go into sports broadcasting, about to enter the world of college, who's going to go in and study that?
Yeah, pick a school that has a great program where you can be really, really hands-on. And a lot of schools have great programs now. When I was just getting into it, University of Miami, which is where I went, had a good reputation, School of Communication, but the cable station was just launching. We didn't even have faculty overseeing it, which in a sense turned out to be kind of cool because we were doing it all on our own. But even a program like that now is, so I would really sort of dive into, what's the market like? What would you be able to cover? How much digital do they do? Because you've got to be able to mix that whole package together now. How much will I be able to, be on camera? What are the facilities like? All of that type of thing. Will there be what are internships in the area offered? That was the most important thing I did. And what you have to do in this business is an internship. You've got to be able to get your foot in the door and be doing stuff in the real world. And I wanted to share this with you guys because I thought it was cool. The other night I caught up for dinner with, his name is Fred Gadelli, and he is in this business. He is like one of the best producers. He he produced Monday Night Football and he has produced Sunday Night Football for years. And he just stepped back to, he was the one behind the launch of the show on Amazon this year. And now he's more of in an executive position overseeing both Sunday night and Thursday night. And we were having dinner the other night and he was talking about that they had 5 entry-level positions for the shows and they had, hundreds of candidates. And he said it was really hard narrowing it down because the students now, had such attention to detail. Like they knew what every different network's broadcast looked like for games and just what made each one different and individual and font packages and the way announcers were. It's so competitive. And I said, like, how did you in the end, like, how did you even choose? So I would say, make yourself as versatile as possible. And he also had said his daughter is at Syracuse, which is a fabulous school for broadcasting, that he said to her, I would rather you at this point, this is like a very insider thing for the broadcast business. Don't worry so much about the grades right now, because all these people I'm looking at, I'm not checking to see their GPA. I'm checking to see their experience. There is nothing like experience in this world. And make sure, he said to her, make sure you're doing things that you can be hands-on and give you firsthand experience. And there is nothing more important than that. So Molly, at your point right now, you got to get into a school, you need good grades, you need all of that. But as the path continues, make sure for this business that you are getting as much experience as possible.
And Molly, I know that you were already looking at Emerson College, but I'm just going to plug it because me and Jeff both went there. John Rook was a professor there. Great school. So we have 4 questions left, and we're just going to power through these and then let Suzy be on our way because we're already about to go over here. So thank you, Suzy, for hanging out a little bit longer. Ronnie, let's go to you next.
Hi, Suzy. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. So my name is Ronnie Martin. I'm a junior at Wayne State in Detroit, and I've been doing freelance sports reporting for about 9 months now. And I'm currently getting my first experience in broadcasting, covering baseball and softball for Wayne State. So I'm basically just wondering, what's the best piece of advice you would give to someone transitioning from reporting to broadcasting?
Be ready to, as I'm sure you are, be ready to move often. And I'm imagining, you're shooting yourself now. Are you?
Yeah, pretty much. We have a very small setup in the booth.
Yeah. And I always felt especially for any of the on-camera elements, to take the part of a piece that I felt most passionate about and most connected to use that part, for on camera. And then again, it goes back to the versatility part. Be open to doing absolutely anything to get your foot in the door or to gain experience, because all those types of things will pay off. And you might think, well, that's not the exact road I want to go down, but I think in the end, that part of it will really pay off. So just be open-minded about where you're willing to go and what you're willing to do to be able to eventually fulfill what you really want to do.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go with Justin next. Justin?
Hi, Suzy. I'm Justin Hill. I'm a sports broadcasting major at Dean College. One question is that with sports reporting, how do you trust in a reliable source, and how do you prepare during the week before Monday Night Football regards teams you'll be covering?
Yeah, the process usually starts on Wednesday, I would say. And that, kind of whittling down all the notes that our research department supplies us. And I have a notebook for every single game for the season. And each team has a sheet, and I'm writing down all the most important and pertinent things about each of the teams. And then I'll contact the PR departments to, here would be my wish list of coaches or players that I would like to be able to jump on the phone with to, again, as I've talked about, kind of confirm some of this information and be able to dig a little deeper. And all of those notes get scribbled into my notebook as well. And that stuff happens over the next few days. I typically travel. I travel on Saturdays to game site and kind of continue doing that research. We have meetings, we start dialing in on the rundown. I'll start writing the show sometimes on Saturday. I'll spend most of the day, I've got games on and I'm writing the show, some parts of it on Sunday while, watching games. So a big chunk of our show now is reviewing what happened on Sunday. So being dialed into what happened is a big part of it. Another meeting on Monday morning to sort of finalize the rundown. And then I'll do throughout the whole day, I'll be jamming on the rundown and get all of that in. We have that next afternoon meeting with the guys, final tweaks of it. And about an hour before I'm going to head to the site, which is usually about 3 hours before the game, I'll tell the guys, all right, ready to print. You guys can go ahead and print my script. And then we all meet up in this production truck in our compound at the stadium, and any final tweaks or talk about things. Adam's always got some breaking news, and then the entire rundown gets thrown away because major and we scramble and rewrite and whatever it takes, and then we're on the air at 6. So I think people would be surprised. And then, for many years I did the games. I was on the sideline. We travel on Tuesdays, but the work week starts on Wednesday. And on my flight home, I watch every single show I have done. I never don't watch what I've done because I'm still critiquing myself to try to get better. So anything I've done on the air, I've watched. And all of us in our production unit, we all watch the show and we take notes on it and we discuss what can we do to be better. And that's a big, big part of it. But the game crew and us pretty much start on Wednesday, and we're on the air on Monday night, and we fly home on Tuesday, and it all starts again on Wednesday. So it's a full week's work to put that game on.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we have a Patriots fan coming in hot, so let's go with Mike Fink. Funny.
I'm not a Patriots fan, just it's March 28th, so I wear the shirt.
Funny. That's clever.
Yeah. Sorry for keeping you late, Suzy, but well, you mentioned versatility a bit, a lot, and I'm starting out. I'm in my 3rd season writing about the NHL, and the struggle is trying to be versatile and do a lot, know a lot about a lot, but also you want to hone in on a niche and you want to be very good at a specific thing at the same time, which is also something that you're told. So how do you balance the two? So I read about the NHL, trying to hone in on a specific category of let's say writing or covering a sport or covering a specific sport versus being doing a lot of different things but not doing them as well. How do you balance especially starting out in your first few years, how do you balance those out? Or what advice would you give to someone who's trying to balance those out?
Right, because in your position right now, it's easy to say, well, what's expected of you to do the job that you're doing right now really well? And that would be to narrow your focus and hone in on a particular sport. But I'll give an example of when I was at ESPN. I had been there for 3 years and I was offered a job at Fox to launch what was supposed to be the competitor to SportsCenter, Fox Sports News. And the concept was really great. It was going to be all these regional sports networks that all sort of merge and come together. And when your game ends, you go to the studio, and we were the studio. But it was all four, like all of the major sports and all of the regions across the country. And I don't even know now, like given how many brain cells I have left, which is not a ton left now, how I prepared for all of that. And I guess at the time it was knowing just some of the main things. Like there's no way you could possibly dive into the intricacies, and there's so much more information available now than there was then. But it was, I mean, we would get packets like this of all the basketball teams and hockey teams. Like, are you kidding me? To be able to talk intelligently to a local audience when their game ended. So there's been so many times throughout my career where I felt like I had to know a little of everything, and it's kind of impossible. But again, serve who you need to at the time. Be the best you can possibly be for what you're doing, because all that other stuff you can cram and then dive into it, submerge yourself and learn the sports you need to, but be really good at what you're doing right now, I think is probably the most important thing.
Oh, you're on mute, Mike.
Oh, he's giving the thumbs up.
Yeah.
On
Can we,
March-
Suzy, would you mind just taking this last question?
Of course.
Okay, Josh, hit us with your last question here.
Hi, sorry, I just wanted to ask one more question. I heard you mention how important internships are, and so I'm currently only just a freshman at Dean College, but I was wondering if this could go for Lauren and Suzy both together. If you know of any possible internship opportunities coming up at ESPN over the summer. I live in the area, so I figured I'd just ask you while you're here, considering Suzy had brought up how big internships were.
Well, interesting, and I'm curious what Lauren says about this, is through the years, I never recommended interning at a place as big as ESPN. I think you get much more out of and can be much more hands-on at a local station or at something smaller. And of course, it depends on what you want to do. But I just think just from a growth standpoint and how much you can sort of learn yourself doing it, that you're better served than, jumping into the giant pool. What do you think, Lauren?
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting train of thought with that, because I never thought of it that way. I didn't intern at ESPN. I mean, I entered there when I was well into my 20s. So I don't really know what the internship process is like there. But I do know people who have interned there, and because of that, they've actually gotten hired right out of college, because they have had, their name is kind of already in the system. They know that they've been there. They've kind of networked a little bit. So I think, as Suzy said, it might be beneficial to get, if you're still early on in college, it might be beneficial to have maybe 1 year, have an internship at a small station, get your feet wet and learn some things one-on-one, and then maybe hope for, the following year to get into ESPN. So that way you can start networking that way. But I would say, if you want to email, I see Jeff is including some ways to stay connected with Society of Professional Journalists in this sports committee. There's a Facebook group, and he also just added the email that you guys can all email. So Josh, I would say email Jeff, and then Jeff, if you could email me his email, and then that way we could stay connected. And then if you see an internship pop up, let me know and I can see what I can do.
Yeah, part of it is, what's the ultimate goal of what you want to do, and I don't. It's obviously a number of years ago for me, since I was interning, but a really key thing for that was in the Miami market, some stations were union and others weren't, and union ones, we couldn't, you couldn't touch a thing as an intern, but the non-union ones, they had us doing everything. So that was a really big component, like what I've said, even, like for Molly, like choosing a school and choosing a market, and how much will they really allow you to do? How much you're going to be able, because again, like just nothing like actual real hands-on experience.
I will say that's I even when I first started, I remember a lot of people being like, I want to be on air, but it's really, really, really difficult to be a first-time employee at ESPN and just think you're gonna automatically get on air. Unfortunately, that's not how it works.
You take that path, like if you are, the associate producers who, you get a 6-month sort of trial and that kind of thing. That's, for entry level, awesome. But yeah, if you're thinking I'm gonna be on the air there, you're much better served. Yeah.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah. No, I would agree with both Suzy and Lauren with what you're both saying. I think in my experience too, going to school at Emerson, I interned at one of the big stations in Boston, and I was at Celtics and Red Sox and all these things. But it was when I was at the Boston Herald and they gave me a camera and gave me a chance to go out. That was a better avenue. And I think in some of the smaller markets and smaller stations, they need more help and they're more willing to put you on the front lines. I think, like Suzy's saying, it's the experience, the experience that you want. So that would be my.
And I think something that we should also recognize is no experience is going to be a bad experience. It may be challenging. It may be frustrating. It may be like, why the heck did I volunteer to do this? But if anything, you guys are young enough where you're going to be able to be like, okay, well, I did that and I hated it. So I know I'm not going to do that again, but I know how to do it. So at least I have that for my resume and I could, put it in my reel or whatever.
Can't limit yourself. Don't be afraid to, because somewhere down the line, it's going to help you. Oh, you know how to do that? You've done that before? Awesome.
Well, this has been awesome. Suzy, I want to give you one more chance. Anything else you want to add? I know we covered a lot and this was awesome.
It's been, I thought the questions were great. It's been really enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, so I know some people didn't come in right off the top of the hour or whatnot. This whole conversation will make its way to the SPJ YouTube page. So you can, if there was a moment that you liked, something you want to go back and watch, you'll have a chance to do that. I did post in the chat one more time, the NFL film story. Make sure you go check it out. It's a great interview. It's really a great look into Suzy's journey. I want to also let everyone know that we have another event coming up next week. Someone that Suzy is very familiar with, one of her coworkers, Adam Schefter, will be joining us next Tuesday. So we'll let him know that you've set the bar high, Suzy. So, but we're really looking forward to that. That will be next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll put out a registration link. So we hope you guys will all join. But thank you so much to everyone for joining. And Suzy, thank you so much for giving us some overtime here tonight.
My pleasure. It's great. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, Suzy.